the entire topic, the silos. In fact, we had some very interesting discussions right through the day, in terms of focusing on this entire aspect of connectedness. How do you connect between different generations, right? Then we also looked at how ERGs could be an effective tool to build connectedness. Then we also had a senior executives actually speak about from a very organizational perspective as leaders, how we can actually contribute to an inclusive behavior, and that could actually build connectedness and belongingness. So we had some great sessions, great speaker, and towards we are now come to the last session of the day. And this is going to be another very, very important discussion that we're really going to have. We are going to talk about the so-called silo effect. And we have actually given the topic as the silo effect, connectedness as a Brahmastra to break the silos. How can we use connectedness to break the silos? As we all know, silos are naturally inbuilt in organizations. The moment you talk about organizations, you're talking about structures. You're talking about divisions, functions, departments, geographies, locations. And we also do that to successfully run our operations, right? It cannot be just this one large organization all together. So you need those silos, so you need those groups, but it also then, has an impact on the silo. The other thing that we're also really looking at, when we are actually talking about from a diversity standpoint, right? Then today we are also have to deal with diversity, right? The diversity could be in terms of the identities that we talk about, being gender, could be person disabilities, different sexual orientations, culture, religion. But in addition to this, we are also talking about different ideas, thoughts, perspectives, right? And therefore, that can also further sort of complicate or further add to the silo mentality or the silo effect. So this is something that we all have to deal with. And as we all know, right, it can really impact the way that we want to connect people, connect with each other, build inclusion. So to really talk about this very interesting topic, and that is something that is where we have three wonderful leaders who are actually dealing with this as business leaders, right, as people, as leaders of people, from a HR perspective, from diversity leaders. So we have a good mix of leaders with us. It's my pleasure first to introduce Anandi Shankar. She is HR head for the beauty and well-being and personal care business for Unilever South Asia. Anandi Shankar is a psychologist by academic qualification and was a practicing counselor working with students and youth. I think you were sort of trying to create the connectedness, Anandi, right from your, as a counselor, right? But she then made a career switch to join the corporate world and joined Unilever within the HR function. In her career with Unilever for over 2 decades, she's across different value chains in both HR partnering and expertise. In her current role, Anandi leads the people strategy for a €3 billion business, comprising of some of those iconic brands that we use, right? Like the Lifebuoy, Dove, Lux, Pond's, and Lakme. She's also the equity, inclusion, and diversity lead for the cluster. And under her leadership, HUL has launched its progressive policy, and this is something very interesting, for survivors of domestic abuse, which has been recognized as a trend-setting and innovative across Unilever. Thank you, Anandi. Thanks a lot for joining us.
My pleasure.
In the same way, it's a great pleasure to introduce Valli Bolavaram. She's a senior vice president technology, United Health Group, a very large group. It's one of the Fortune 5 companies, and she's a strong engineering leader. That's why I said, we also have people from the business leaders who are really going to talk about the impact of silo. She has a passion to make global teams work, and you need connectedness to make the global team work, right? So she's the absolute person to be there and talk about it. She's worked in the US for more than 18 years before moving back to India, as a passion to get stuff done. Led product transformation across multiple companies like Microsoft and Target, which resulted in creating highly efficient teams. She believes team members and their well-being is crucial to success. Happy to welcome you, Valli. Thanks for joining. Thank you so much. We have another person and a great diversity today to have in the panel. Rahul Ghosh, the partner at IBM Consulting, He has over 23 years of rich experience in information technology and also in the consulting business, experience in supply chain consulting and SAP implementation and large size projects. Therefore, again, a person has been dealing with a huge organization, large team members, again projects, different teams all coming together to actually deliver. Clients ranging from large Indian and overseas steel manufacturers to leading global consumer durable goods companies, both in India and across the world. He's a seasoned leader, well known for managing large diverse teams, which I just mentioned now, effective to deliver results in a complex business environment. So thanks, Rahul. Thanks once again for to every one of you to join today. And this is going to be some very interesting conversation that we had. And I thought we will start with uh, a opening remark from each one of you. Your thoughts on the silo. What you see are some of the indicators of silo. Could be in an organization, could be in a larger team, it could be a smaller team as well. Now, what are some of the indicators, and how do you see this impacting the organization or the teams as well in terms of the productivity, in terms of the engagement? Anandi, we'll start with you. If you could, just share your thoughts, opening remarks.
Thanks, Karthik. And I realize that I'm the only HR professional on this panel. So truly, I mean, this is going to be HR and line and going to be really interesting. Would love to hear Rahul and Vali's thoughts. But in my considered opinion, where do we see the silo effect coming up more? I think there are two factors that at least we have realized. When the organization gets larger and larger, the maturity of the organization is of a higher order and the number of employees that you have becomes large. That's when that matrix comes into play. And I think that's one of the first reasons where we start seeing the silo effect. So the first is the size of the organization and its maturity. I think the second factor that we see in the silo effect, which exasperates it really, is where we've gone more virtual. Because, whether we like it or not, of course, hybrid is a great way to work. But one of the side effects of hybrid is that it does cause more silo and less feelings of connectedness. And therefore, any organization which seems to be in this, intersection of Venn diagram, a large organization which also largely operates virtually, I think that's where you systemically need to do something about getting into the silo effect. Where do we see, in my 20 years of experience, what do I see as a effect of the silo effect? I think when you see someone coming into a meeting or, a cross-functional meeting and they're blindsided, where you're supposed to have a network, you're supposed to meet a deliverable, and suddenly something comes which you did not anticipate. Being blindsided is the biggest lead behavioral indicator of the silo effect. And, as all of us as leaders and HR professionals, I think difficult to quantify, but that's the one that I would watch out from. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you. I think, that is something that we are going to talk about, because we are, representing large organizations today, right? And as we go bigger and bigger, we really see this effect of silo actually looming large, and you really need ways to really manage them, right? And therefore, and that is also becomes very important for us to scale bigger. And if you are not able to deal with that, scalability becomes an issue. Your opening remarks.
Is it me you gave? I just had a small blur.
No, I said Rahul.
Rahul. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, I think the silo effect has been around for some time. It's not something new. Probably what has happened that it has been accentuated a lot more. And I think I'll echo with Anandi in the context of saying, with organizations growing bigger, when you are having multiple time zones, multiple countries, multiple cultures to cover, okay, you suddenly realize that, that what was probably just, an organizational construct where you'd have finance having a particular view. And I'm talking about, let's say, take a small organization. In a small organization itself, you'd probably have, the constant kitbit in terms of saying, sales will always say that, no, I need this. Production will say, I can only deliver this. And, finance will say, guys, if you can't do what you want to do, stop it, because I'm not going to let you waste money just like that. So business silos would have always been there. What I think has become a lot more pronounced is the fact that the silo effect kind of affects an individual a lot more nowadays, is simply because the myriads of silos that have been created. Okay, I think that's what kind of gets you into that state where you say, I have to go and deal with HR. Sorry, Anandi, but or I'll have to go and deal with finance with something or the other, and that kind of manifests itself in terms of delayed decisions. Okay, confused messaging. It could be you've probably got an in principle approval to do something from one part of the organization, but there's still another part of the organization that needs to fall in line to say, you know what, I think this is something that's doable, it is desirable, and hence you should go ahead with it. But at the end of the day, given that every department has its own KPIs to follow and look at saying, how they maximize on that, there's this increasing frequency at which, you'd find these silos come about. Okay. And not to forget, I mean, with COVID coming around, and while we are still in the aftermath of COVID, there are even more silos that have got created at an individual level, because people have got comfortable in terms of, there was a huge hammer that fell at one point in time. Everyone said, let's work from home. But now that we are slowly trying to come back and bring that sense of connectedness in teams, in organizations, and are looking at saying, can we get you back at work? There are other tenuous relationships that have developed while staying individually, which make people feel comfortable in what they're doing right now, and they find it difficult to come back. So that's yet another layer that's come around. So I think it's just to kind of echo and essentially amplify what we talk about as the silo effect.
Yeah. And Rahul, I think the point that you made, right? When you are from the business or any specific function that you do, and you go to the HR, and then there is some pushback. Then you go to the finance, there is a pushback, and probably the HR goes to the business as well. They also get a pushback, right? It's vice versa. It happens,
Absolutely.
right? And because we are all have our own goals and our whole KPIs, right? And that we really need to match it, and therefore sometimes it creates that silo as well. But how do you then connect with each other, right? Because there is this one larger organization goal, but each function, each department has its own goals, and we really need to look at it. It could be the financial numbers, the cost that we want to keep down, the engagements that we really want to, employee engagement that we want to do. I think we all have our own goals within larger goals, and I think Rahul, you made that point. It is how do you connect with each other? In spite of all these individual goals, the larger team goals and the functional goals that we have. Thanks, Rahul. So those are the complications that we really need to deal with. Wali, over to you. In your perspective, how do you see the silos impacting, and how do you see this manifesting in organizations, Wali?
Yeah, so thank you, Karthik. I agree with what Rahul and Anandi have said. There are all these multiple complexities. So I won't go into reiterating the same things, because I passionately believe what they said is absolutely true. There are silos also. I'll just briefly touch upon it. There are silos that we ourselves carry due to our cultural, religious, ethnic, all these other backgrounds, that even though we might be in a crowd of people, sometimes they feel alone. Sometimes they feel alone and lonely. And so these are some of the things that we need to break. Silos, the way it happens is the key indicator would be you feel lonely and you're not able, from a productivity standpoint, you're not able to reach out for help. If you talk to 4 or 5 people, somebody will have an idea, then you connect, then you're able to connect the dots, and then you're able to deliver that much better. So these are some of the things that we need to, that's the reason why, breaking the silos is actually the nuclear option, the Brahmastra, because it can potentially increase your productivity, your sense of well-being, your sense of contribution to the organization 100x. Because if you feel part of a team, if you feel that there is a tribe, your own tribe, then you are happier individuals contribute much more positively and effectively to the organization. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Wali. You spoke about the tribes and you spoke about culture, and Vali will come back to you in terms of, how do you deal with this, right? Because the moment you talk about diversities, you're also talking about different cultures. So, we'll come way forward, Vali, from you. Now I just now want to get into very specifics, depending on the kind of work that you do and the business that you're in. I thought I will first ask Rahul the question. I think in somewhere the conversation came about, the large matrix kind of organizations, right? And IBM, as we all know, it's a very large organization, not just in India, but I think globally as well, right? And there is this huge matrix structure that you need to have. Another thing, very important thing, that in a company like IBM and specifically technology companies, people come together for projects, right, from different teams, and they stay together for maybe a year, 2-3 years, and then they have to go back again. And how do you build connected in such kind of a matrix? And sometimes it could be very short duration. I'm saying short is a relative word, could be 1-2 years, right? But how do you build that connectedness in a sense or in a sort of a matrix organization, Rahul?
This might be a little long, but let me try.
Okay.
So let me put it, let me rewind by about 2 years, okay? Because fortunately, till about 2 years ago, the way of working was a known way of working. People would have worked in that way for almost about 50-60 years, if not more, okay? And I think what IBM did bring about at that point in time, by getting people, with the very fact that people would come to office, there would be always a sense of orientation that would be brought about, okay? There are a certain set of cultures, and this is not just for an IBM per se, it's for almost any organization. Every organization would have an onboarding program, an orientation session, get people to kind of, talk, mingle, and kind of, get across a particular cultural ethos of sorts, to say, we work for our clients, we work for our clients' success. And as a result of that, you would have that being built in across the echelons of the organization structure, of saying, what are you there for? You're there to ensure that you can deliver success to your client with integrity, and ensure that that you by doing these two, you're also following the kind of processes that have been laid out by the organization. So that basically formed the North Star in terms of what IBM stood for. Okay. Now, having said that, the moment you are having people coming across from, let's say, different service lines, okay, or let's say different industry verticals, okay, with that basic tenet being kept in mind, if let's say you are talking about a particular client, I can probably, Anandi, I'll take the reference of Unilever itself in that context, right? I mean, we do serve you in multiple respects. And to that extent, you will definitely have someone from the distribution sector who is responsible for Unilever in that context. And if you're doing an SAP implementation for Unilever, then we'll have the SAP service line coming into that play. And the two would be ensuring that, that we have a set of people who are technically good in terms of what they can deliver from an SAP front, have an understanding of saying what needs to be done for a CPG industry, and look at saying how we empathize and understand those requirements and translate that. Okay, pretty easy till this point in time. Okay, it is difficult in the sense that I just took one service line and one industry as said in that context. But let's say I added a cognitive services to it, I'll still have a certain set of people coming to that. I think from a standpoint of how a project manager would kind of look at trying to stitch the team together, is to kind of quickly look at saying that you know what, this is the objective that we are trying to meet. Okay, we would fly in people together at one location, if you or else we kind of look for people from the vicinity and say form the team with best possible talent that you have from there and build this up, but create that sense of purpose and say, this is what we need to achieve, this is what we have as a plan. Tell me if you have an issue, we will reorganize or restructure in some manner so that we at least deliver to what we can do for a particular client. Okay, come COVID, and you have this entire thing been disrupted by saying that, okay, guys, there's no one who can work from a client office. There's no one who can come and work in an office. And to make things worse, you'll have people saying, okay, fine, since I'm not required out here, let me go back to my hometown and figure out what I'm going to do out there. And you're also having people joining right through this period. Okay. And that's when it becomes more and more complicated. Okay. So now you've got a set of people who have probably worked, in a few IT companies before, or may have come from the industry, but they are not getting ingrained with that ethos the way you would have got them done when you were in office, because you would be living it, you would be breathing it. Okay. But at this point in time, the only thing that you can do is what we are doing right now, having a 2D interaction of sorts, where you're saying, IBM is this company which has been there for the last 130 years. These are the 10 different things it has done right through it. And that's the only input that's going into the new person's, ken of sorts, of saying, what do I appreciate of this organization? And all through that period, he is sitting alone at home, probably with his family, maybe not with his family, maybe with his parents, or a certain set of friends, for all I know. But at the end of the day, he's alone. He's completely alone in terms of saying, I have this IBM laptop. I talk to a set of people, but I am not able to interact with them. There's nothing that I can do. Go to a coffee bar, a coffee stall of sorts, and say, this manager did this to me, or that person doesn't seem to be doing the right job. So that personal interaction, when it gets lost, it becomes more and more tough in terms of trying to build that culture in. Okay. And it's not that IBM by itself is facing that problem. From a client perspective also, there's a similar situation that's going on. And that's when we would for instance, personally, I would kind of have these open chats with my client and say, what, I'm having this problem. And he'd say, yes, so am I. Okay. And that's when you kind of look at saying, okay, fine, what are the other things that we can do to engage people? And I think the answer always was in the point in terms of how do you go around engaging people despite not being close to them physically, right? So I think that's how we've been trying to kind of build up this entire thing over the last 2 years, in terms of saying, have these online meets, ask questions, are you feeling fine? Because I am not feeling fine. Okay. I feel lonely. I don't know whom to go to when I need some help. So we'll be kind of, also talk about saying, if you need help, come to me, or go to this person. Here are the people who are available. And that's how we would try to create that electronic environment of sorts to kind of make people feel safe and feel connected in terms of what they are doing. So, like I said, it was going to be a long answer, but it's the way that we have been trying to kind of attempt and figure out how to replicate the real life into the digital life to get things going.
Absolutely, I think, Rahul, we need to find that the technology is a source of a solution and a problem, and then again we need to find a solution to the problem that is created by the technology. The technology enables, but I think it also contributes to the kind of silos that we have. And I see that kids use the mobile and become silo in themselves, right? They're always there, they're not connecting with people, right? But we also need to find ways to do it. I think technology, the way that you put it, we really need to see how we also leverage technology. I think the hybrid is going to be the way, right? We are going to be sort of working from remote locations, working from home, and we may not still have the luxury which Rahul you spoke, we all come together and we sort of work together at the same location. I think that luxury is probably gone. We have different set of luxuries now, but I think it also comes with its own set of problems.
It comes at a price. And honestly, just to answer that question in terms of using technology for collaboration, there are tools that all of us are probably using that. I mean, murals for looking at saying, how do you get ideas around, Trello dashboards to say, what do you need to do as your next set of activities, and who will take over from what, right?
Yeah.
So all those things are of course there, and of course the Zooms and the WebEx of the world are what is helping us connect with each other in that context. But yeah,
thank you, Rahul. And Vali, as I said, I'm going to come back to this very important question. In the moment you talk about diversity, right? We're talking about gender, we talk about different orientations, we talk about men, we talk about women. I think when my conversation, you also refer to this often mentioned old boys club, like, okay, so and over to you, Vali. I think that is something that we spoke about and really wanted you to share about how do you deal with this. In my own opening, I also mentioned about just not about department functions. Diversity itself creates silos, and if we are not able to build that culture of inclusion, it's going to be difficult. How do you manage this, Vali?
Yeah, so I think we are what our life experiences are, how we grew up, right? Each one of us has a different life experience, the way we grew up, the way we interact, how our family is, what kind of food we eat, what kind of celebrations we have. All of these things and what is the expectation of our culture from a society perspective, right? So these are some of the things that we carry with us throughout our life. And sometimes they help us connect better. And sometimes because of these predilections, we build these silos in our head, where we say, okay, for example, it could be circumstantial. For example, a working mother with young kids, where when she wants to, somebody's having a happy hour. She really wants to go to the happy hour because, that's where networking happens. Like, Rahul was mentioning, you get together, you say, hey, this manager or this leader, or I'm having this problem. Oh, my network is not working, or, this data I'm not able to access because of, and so you find some mutually connectedness to solve the problem. Right. But think of the mom of young kids who has to make a choice between, am I going to go and network at this, evening hour, or am I going to go back home and, pick up my kids from daycare or whatever the situation is. So these are the silos that actually are real, that happen regardless of, there is that all that Rahul said, and I agree with him. But even if we are all together, in person, we sometimes carry these silos. And one of the ways to overcome that, I've always thought about that, and something that I've done personally is to be very conscious of prioritizing the things that are happening in my life and not feeling sorry, right? Not feeling sad. If I was a mom of young kids, many years ago, but then the priority would be, I would be like, okay, who's going to come? What do I have to do with them? Okay, maybe this is going to work. And then making sure that you're okay asking for help. You don't have to be, the quintessential, I can do it all person. You can ask for help. You should ask for help.
What
If you're
was
not able
coined
to
as
do
the
it,
super mom thing.
yeah, the super mom thing, right? Yeah, so you should ask for help. You should lean into your support system, whether it is your spouse, whether it is your siblings, whether it is your help, or your neighbors. All of these people are available. You just need to find ways of supporting so that you can focus. And when you are at work, you are at work 100%. That's what worked for me. When I'm at work, I'm 100% at work, because whatever time that I spend there, I want to make sure that I can get the most out of it. And so if it is, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, is we are largely global teams today, right? IBM, Optum, United Health Group, Unilever, all of us are relevant in different geographies. And so there is some part of this remoteness already there. While COVID has accentuated it, we would have had to find ways to connect with our colleagues in different geography and time zones. And that is what I would like for all of us to remember, that we've done this before, whether it is through IM and now WhatsApp, FaceTime, all these different tools. Technology has provided all these different tools that you can just pick up the phone and you can figure out what is the time. Like, for example, something that has worked for me is to connect with my colleagues in the US or other geographies is, early morning. I'm an early riser, 5 o'clock, 5 to 5:30, I do my thing. And 5:30, I know, my colleagues in the US are on their way home. So then you call and say, hey, what happened? So this is what happened. This is what happened. And then we'd be like, okay, how are your kids? What's your day? Okay, I'm going to pick this up from you. And then I'm going to move forward. So there are ways that if we expand a little bit, our thinking, there are ways to connect, and there are ways to stay relevant. There are ways to ask for help and then contribute much more. Because I truly believe that if you're connected, that means you're happy, and happiness will increase your productivity, not 10x or 100x, because you are coming to work with enthusiasm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vali. And one thing I take away from you, Vali, is that while as an organization we could come up with sort of systems and processes to make these connections happen, but I think the onus is on each individual, each one of us, to reach out and to connect with others, right? And I think the effort has to come within also, just not wait for others to connect with us. Vali, I think that's what I take as a single takeaway from what you said, Vali.
Be very mindful. That was the
Yeah,
word
absolutely.
that I was going to be very mindful, and we know that it is actually not whiling away your time. It is actually important to doing your work.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vali. And to you, Anandi, as I said, I started early saying that, Unilever, right? As much as the companies are very global, but Unilever, the nature of business, right? The operation is there in every nook and corner, right? Of India, right? Of any place, right? You need to be at the cities, the towns, the villages. You have to have distribution networks, right? And therefore there are the silos, right? And how do you really deal with it? And at the end of the day, as I said, it reads me, and for you the customers are this 1 billion population, right, Anandi? Right? So how do you deal with this, Anandi?
No, I think thanks. And I just want to say it's an amazing session so far. I'm really enjoying myself. And Malli, I love the super mom ask for help kind of feeling. Okay. Coming back to your question, Karthik, as an FMCG organization, I think what you have to realize is silo effect can actually have.
Your voice is echoing, Anandi. Just a second. Your voice is echoing suddenly. Is it for me only?
No, it's for me too.
Yeah. Are you on double? Are we logged on somewhere by in?
No, is it still going on?
Still there. It's still there. But you continue. I think we can hear you fine. But please go ahead.
Okay. And Lakshmi or anyone from the backend team, let me know if it's fine or you want me to do something else. Yeah. So as an FMCG organization, I think what becomes important is connectedness, and having connectedness actually leads to insight, which leads to innovation, which leads to business growth, right? So having a silo effect is actually detrimental to business. And I'll give you an example. Inclusion means hearing every voice around the table, right? And that's what really, and very often we talk about silo effects and inclusion, and we talk about different departments. So we talk about the depth of inclusion, the width of inclusion. What we don't talk about enough is the depth of inclusion. Okay, I can still hear people saying that my voice is echoing. I'm wondering, Karthik and Rahul, if you go on mute, maybe that could just help. So I'm just trying to see whether Rahul, yeah. And Lakshmi, if you can just give me a heads up if this is a little better. Any better? Okay, so I'm just going to go on. Yeah, but what people don't talk about is the depth of inclusion. And that means listening to the voices that are closest to the consumer. Yeah, very often we think of voices in terms of a certain hierarchy. And we don't bother listening to maybe the last feet on street, which is closest to the customer or the consumer. And I'll give you an example of this, right? Say Mama Earth. Mama Earth 3 years ago, and I really respect that competition. Mama Earth 3 years ago launched its onion shampoo. And they launched its onion shampoo in Delhi and Punjab. And when they launched it at that time, if you asked anyone who was sitting in the corporate office of an FMCG organization, they said, listen, it's a gimmick. It's not going to work. It's going to be a flash trend here and there. We've seen many startups go. But the two groups that said that this is a trend which is here to stay are people in the R&D department who said, onion, Indians have been using it for years. This is the magic ingredient. And the second group that said it was the people who are feet on street, really close to customers and consumers, who said it's being sold out within a day in every place that it is. Yeah. And therefore, I think it's really important to ensure that your silo effect, especially for a large FMCG, is not just across different departments, but listens to every voice on the table. What we've done in Unilever is two things. I think we've just changed the construct of growth to say, let's go down and empower cross-functional teams. So we've broken India into 14 different mini Indias. And in these 14 brand mini boards, everyone is sitting around the table. R&D, supply chain, sales, marketing, everybody sits around the table and has an equal point of view on what we need to do. And the second, you can't just, softwire it. You need to hardwire it. So each of these teams has one goal, a common goal to deliver. And I think the combination of these two really helps us minimize, not reduce, minimize the silo effect.
Thank you, Anandi. I think that's really a great insight. Great insight in the way that Unilever is looking at it, and where you had this one big corporate center, now we are actually, sort of broken down. I would say, or creating those independent corporate centers which are empowered with their own sort of, and I think that's what I heard from you. The R&D team, its own sort of a sales, the same marketing team. You're much more closer to the customers, and therefore the decision making is that much more faster, quicker, and also in terms of what is expected from the market. I think that's a great insight, Anandi, that we really get from you, and I think that is something that we can all look at, irrespective of the industry, right? And how do we get much closer to the customers? It could be same thing could be replicated in the workplace as well. How do we get closer to each and one employee, right? The same thing could be applied to the employees as well, to our colleagues as well. I think that's a great point. Now I'd just like to go to Rahul. Rahul, one thing that, but if you could keep this brief, Rahul, I think we're just getting close to this. And I really wanted to touch upon, I think somebody also mentioned about this entire COVID, right? And I think, how has this been? How are you dealing with this, Rahul? In a sense, it has created the silos, right? People working that. Is there any way that you're dealing with this?
So there are there are about a couple of multi-pronged approaches that have been taken. Okay, certain things have been done in a manner of speaking to make the onboarding easier. Okay, so there's a whole lot of laptop courier that we have been doing to ensure that people are receiving things that they need to start work, to kind of feel that they're part of an organization fairly quickly. For us, it's been, it's like 48 hours, you've rolled out an offer. In the next 48 hours, you have a laptop in place, shipped at your doorstep, so that you know what to do with that. And you also have, an HR number, you have your people manager number, you have all of this kind of put in place, so that you do not have a reason to say that there's no connectedness that's going to come around. Okay, and this is just not limited in terms of just saying the people who are onboarding as employees for IBM. It's also for all the subcontracting people who also kind of add to our workforce in that context. Okay. The second thing has been in terms of looking at saying how you can have frequent connects. Firstly, as let's say the project teams or the sub teams in a project. The second one is in terms of having a constant connect with the people manager, who is responsible for how to take the person along administratively within the organization, so that he knows when to clock, what to claim, how to kind of look for help when he's in trouble. And then obviously the COVID helplines, because at the end of the day, it's been a devastating experience of just having just seeing people get COVID, either in their family or by themselves, and then kind of also get into a state of stress for saying, now what do I do? Where can I get help from? So we also started creating all those groups to kind of ensure that we could tide over that. Now, obviously, the next thing that we are doing with COVID kind of receding in some manner, we are looking at ways of encouraging people to say, look at taking that one step or two step out to say that that you can come back physically into the organization. Yes, I know it's never going to be fully 100% in there, but having said that, that connect always does help. Every account is looking at saying, all those who are in a particular city, come over, let's have a lunch, let's have a dinner, let's have a cultural event, so that we can have that connect. There's so many people who have kind of joined in COVID. For them, entering the IBM office to say, there is a design studio, or there is an industry lab, or there's a cybersecurity immersive experience center, I mean, even those are novelties for them in terms of saying, what is it that IBM has to offer apart from just saying, here's a laptop and you can work on it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rahul. Wali, I just wanted to ask you this, again, getting back to the geography, the moment you talk about geographies, we are talking about different cultures, religion, nationalities, ethnicities. So how do you manage that connectivity or the connectedness at United Health, Wali?
So a couple of things. One is celebrations. We are all into celebrations. We celebrate July 4th, we celebrate August 15th, we celebrate many, many events, large scale, not in one particular location, but everywhere. So that, I had my colleagues who said, recently we had 75th Independence Day for India, right? So we said, and so people get together and they display flags and they talk. So you have something to talk in common. That is one thing. The second thing is, I just want to hit up on how the thinking has changed, right? Each one of our businesses have grown because there is a depth. See, we have T shape. There's a depth and there is a breadth. And from a depth perspective, there is focus on line of business, there's focus on revenue, so on and so forth. The connectedness comes when we identify similar problems from a technology perspective and then build these platforms and products. And when you start building them, then Anandi was referring to it, the same thing, we sit around the table and then we say, okay, what is it that we're trying to solve? Are we trying to solve for XYZ problem? And we are in healthcare. So it is much more important for us to be connected to make sure that, the member is right in the center, and the doctor who is there to provide some service is able to reach to the member who is greatly in need for it. So we've been solving for that. So that connectedness, that singular goal of saying we are here to help healthcare accessible to everybody on earth. So that kind of brings all of us together. And the third thing is, we've done so many virtual events, but we've made it fun. Like, for example, initially when COVID hit us, one of the biggest things that we heard was, we were not even allowed to step out, right? When we had all the lockdowns happen. And one of the big things that we would do is have virtual Antakshari sessions, virtual hackathons, where we would be like, okay, make your own pizza at home, but work on this code and we'll solve this problem. So these are all the things that we did to kind of make sure that there is a cohesiveness in the organization, that people, especially who are onboarding new, will feel part of the culture, and then they will absorb it, and then they'll feel inclusive.
Thank you, Wali. We are getting very close to the session. I think I have just one final question to Anandi. Anandi, your thoughts on, right, we spoke about, we are speaking about employees, and employees today looking to do different things, right? And they are just not contented just doing the same role again and again and again and for a continued period, right? So how do you manage that, different expectations, learnings that we really want to look at? And therefore that again, you could not look at somebody's joining a function and a department, they'll be there for the rest of their lives, right? And that could also be in terms kind of a silo mindset, you're there at that one vertical or one thing. So how do you deal with that employee expectations, and how do you engage with them, Anand?
Yeah, I think silo, and I'm hoping that the echo is gone, so I put a thumbs up in case it has. I think the silo effect, when you see it panning out in the future, I love what Wali had said in the beginning. The silo is in our minds. And I think nowadays when employees are joining, they are unapologetic about saying that if I have joined as a finance manager, it doesn't mean I have to retire as a finance manager. I can do many things. This silo is broken in my head. And therefore, as an organization, I think it's really important to say, how can we give people different experiences across functions, across work streams, and take a break down these silos of functions? Yeah, that's what we should do within the organization. I think the second is, even more in the future, break down silos within companies. Dual employment is a concept that's there in some of the far more advanced organizations than even within IT. And I think that's really going to be the next trend. Dual employment, where we break down the silo of an organization, saying as long as it's non-complete, someone can work gainfully in different kinds and just bring different skills. And that is really breaking the silo in the future, Karthik. So that's back to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is this huge conversation and maybe controversy happening about moonlighting and all those. And you made the point. We need to be, I think, much more open. We are breaking conventions. We are breaking stereotypes. Maybe dual employment, and I think maybe the order of the day. So thanks once again. I think it's very interesting conversation, different perspective from different industries. Business leader, we have an HR leader, and I think wonderful having you with you all.